Good morning, Bishop. How are you?
I'm doing very fine. Thank you so much for joining us once again on this lovely Thursday morning. Welcome to the program, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and good morning to Jordan FM listeners and our wonderful callers.
All right. So we've seen the report from the two UN United Nations agency, the World Food Program, and the Food and Agriculture Organization. Like we said, other countries are listed. Of course, our specific focus is on Nigeria. Uh, Sir, run this report now. What does this actually mean for Nigerians? Because we are talking about around over 120 million Nigerians. We're talking about over 120 million Nigerians living around the poverty line. So what does this mean? What does this report? What does it mean for when we're talking about the well-being of Nigerians?
Well, Bishop, thank you so much, and again, thank you for having me. It's I think that the reports by uh, the World Food Program and Food and Agricultural Organization. I think these are the two organizations that produce this report. I think basically, the report is not new. The only thing I see is that they re-encode or re-emphasize the fact that Nigeria is facing acute hunger. Not only Nigeria, of course, you see, they also highlighted other countries like Mali, South Sudan, Yemen, even Palestine, and other rest of it. Even Haiti as part of the countries that are facing acute hunger. Again, one thing they said clearly is that this hunger is coming as a result of the major factor for this hunger and we record now, particularly as it's moving towards famine, is as a result of conflicts and violence. What this clearly means is that the current insecurity we're having in this country, of course, all of us know that this is the price we have to pay. If you look at Northwest, for instance, if you look at Northeast, for instance, even look at North Central, and even many parts of the Southwestern Nigeria, even in the Southeast, in the Southeast, you see that a greater number of persons are actually abandoning their farms. Of course, if you see that in Northwest, for instance, the predominant occupation in Northwest is farming. Greater number of farmers can't go to farm. And not also forget that Nigeria is a country that mainly rely on the artisan farmers, what we call small-scale farmers, smallholder farmer, the artisan farmer, the rural farmers, in the case may be. We rely on them for our food sustainability. And these farmers can't go to farm anymore because of high level of insecurity. Because if you see what is happening, is either the farmer header clashes as we see in Benue State or even in other parts of the country, or outright killing or kidnapping. So we need to address this insecurity. Again, the thing is, and that's why sometimes when the government begins to talk in terms of supporting the farmers, in terms of agri loan and in terms of farm inputs, I really do not understand. Because what happens really is that what kind of agri intervention are you giving in a country where people cannot go to farm? At the end of the day, what you're likely to do is that to roll out intervention and roll out agri loan. At the end of the day, the people that will get the loan are really not farmers, but there are people who portfolio farmers who sit in Abuja or another part of the country to claim they are farmers, but in reality, they are not farmers. Again, this also takes us to another conversation. I think that is also important that the government officials and the government themselves, particularly those who speak for government, I think that we should stop this conversation and this idea of thinking that the best we can do for the government is to lie or to make the government look good. Of course, we need to move away from public relation to reality. The reality is that Nigerians are facing hunger, and they also forget. Apart from the reports, apart from the World Food Report and Food and Agricultural Organization, apart from their reports, don't also forget that World Bank had released reports that about 129 million Nigerians are struggling, are also deep into poverty. So what this means for me really is that we need to move away, radical departure, less in intellectual conversation. We need to move away from the much celebrated GDP. We can't be discussing the GDP anymore. We should really understand that we need to throw away GDP and begin to have conversation based on real development. And that conversation, we need to have conversation that will address the basic three things of life identified by Maslow's theory of basic needs. And he said that in the physiological needs, which is food, clothing, and shelter, as we speak today, Nigerian state is still struggling with the basic thing of life, which is food. We are not even talking about clothing, we are not even talking about shelter. But Nigerian state cannot feed its people, which is basically food. And we need to address food. We need to address clothing. And we need to address shelter. These three things, before we begin to talk, begin to think in terms of education and technological innovation that can even actually make us to compete with the global community. I think this is what we need to do. And again, that this is also explains why we shouldn't be playing politics with insecurity. Why we should be able to really, really admit the fact that we are having serious insecurity. Of course, it's not only Nigerian something, but I also believe, even if it is not only Nigerian something, I think we should also find homegrown solution laced with state commitment and political will to address the insecurity that is pushing us into hunger and poverty. And when we do that, we can clearly say that we are on the road to development. But this current denial, and of course, the conversation about insecurity today, what are we talking about? Rather than even to address the insecurity, we are purely facing conversation around how Muslims are the one being killed, Christians are the one being killed. I think that's not the conversation. The conversation is that we need to secure our people, we need to secure our farms so that the farmers can go back to their farm and begin to produce so that Nigeria can become food sufficient nation. Bishop, this is what I'm thinking.
Thank you so much, Dr. Liberty. I really appreciate you for that. Now, the other aspect of the report that really is like a worry for me is that between the World Bank noted that there was an increase from 115 million in 2023 to 129 million in 2024, which means that 14 million Nigerians have become poorer in that particular regard. Now, this is the one that scared me most when I read the report. It says that being employed, however, is no guarantee of being able to escape poverty. Many jobs are not productive and therefore remunerative enough to afford a life beyond poverty. What do you have to say regarding these statements from in this report?
Yes, that's true. That's true. They are right. They are very right. Absolutely right. Because this is a country where we talk about minimum wage at 70,000. You understand? If you have a workforce where we are still debating minimum wage at 70,000, and as at today, a bag of rice is within 65, 60,000 or thereabout. And I had always told you before now that if you go to Cuba, for instance, If you go to Dawaki, for instance, if you go there, I'm just mentioning the suburb area of Abuja. The least you can get in one bedroom is about 1 million or 1.2 million. A friend of mine just paid about 1.8 million. And when you have that situation, and you need also to pay for transportation, and you also need to pay for other basic needs. At the end of the day, how many of these civil servants that leave their house for town every month? How many of them have at about 150,000 or 200,000 naira every month? How many of them do have that? So if you earn 150,000 or 100,000 naira or 250,000, 200,000, and the case may be, and you need to pay exorbitant rents, you need to face this high cost of living in this part of the world, then at the end of the day, what you are just doing is that you're pushing for survival. You really do not have a job, and you need to drive economy. That production should be uh, the mainstay of the state policy, which that production will be able to engage the people, make us a productive nation. And when you make us a productive nation, at the end of the day, you're going to stabilize the economy. And you also, when you stabilize the economy, you're also
Yes,
going
sir.
to have, in a way, to have reasonable exchange.
The,
Can you hear me?
uh,
Can you hear me now?
mm,
Can you
yeah,
hear
I can
me?
hear you, please, sir. I can tell you, sir. Please go on.
Say, at the end of the day, you're going to have a reasonable exchange rate that will drive the economy. So, at the end of the day, what we are seeing in Nigeria, for instance, is that people are just trying to survive. That's not really job, because at the end of the day, what do you see? Most of these people we see go to town, most of them actually survive on what they call salary advance or loan, or whatever the case may be. At the end of the day, these guys are just struggling to survive. So we need to have an economy that looks at industrialization discourse, and move industrialization intervention. We must find a way to support the informal sector. We must find a way to make industrialization a core cause, or a core component, or core focus, or even our own state policy. That is the only way we are going to have a society, or have a country that is going to turn this country around, because most of them do not have really capital base to actually stand to say this is it. So whether they are, for the fact that they said that our employment is not really addressing poverty. So what it's just addressing is survival. People are just trying to survive, to stay afloat. But it cannot give you that kind of salary that will give you the opportunity to invest, or the opportunity to do other things. And that's where we find ourselves. And again, it's also important that this kind of report, of course, although there's nothing new about this report, but this kind of report, of course, because the United Nations is adding voice to it, and even the World Bank had said something regarding that, this kind of reports, it shouldn't be something that government should deny. They should form state policies. They should form government. They should form state policies, or government should also consider them, so that they will be able to come up with an intervention that is really designed not just for people to sit in their offices, either in the state or federal level, to take away money meant for farmers, but practically interventions that they would design it in such a way that the monies will get to the real farmers in the field, not necessarily the portfolio farmers who claim to be farmers, but they are not farmers. Of course, you and I know the story of Uncle Borowa game. We know how he ended. And I think that we really need to take governance serious. Of course, I tell people it's not really because people may think, oh, Liberty doesn't like the government of APC, or Liberty didn't like the government of PDP. But again, it's not about Liberty liking APC or liking Tinubu, for instance, or even Buhari government. But the thing that is that I am one of those that I just believe, and I hope and I pray that the Nigerian state works for all of us. Because and the only way the Nigerian state can work is not by prayer. It's not the only way the Nigerian state can work is when the states, the people, the officials begin to implement state policies not in contradiction with personal interest. It shouldn't be about primitive capitalist accumulation. It should be
mm,
about delivery of service. And those
yeah,
people with the best brain should be brought on board and let them
mm,
do this job. And again, let me also add that even when we design this intervention, there must not be equal intervention or same intervention to all communities. Every community, every local government, or every particular state has its own different need. Then before you design this intervention, the farmers must also play active role to tell you what they want. The farmers must be part and parcel of those that will design this intervention using their own lived experience and indigenous knowledge. It is when you design this intervention with the farmers, you are able to, I call it co-creation. It is when you co-create solution with the farmers, you are able to exactly address what the issues are. Not that you sit in your office, give money to a consultant who has never been to any of these villages to design intervention that at the end of the day, the only thing the intervention will achieve is that it will put money in the pockets of those who are not even farmers. At the end of the day, we continue with the same poverty, we continue with the same insecurity, we continue with the same hunger, which we are which we are all of us are confronting. This is what I'm saying, Bishop.
mm. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Liberty. I don't have any other question to ask regarding this. I think you have talked so much on the subject matter. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us this morning in the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you so much. Okay.